My fiancée left me for my brother on our wedding day with my parents' full support. Now she sought help against her husband's controlling behavior. I, 35M, had the most terrible day of my life 2 years ago. An hour prior to our wedding, my fiancée, Alexandra, 32F, called to inform me that she was unable to proceed. The actual bombshell? Behind my back. She had been seeing my brother, Nathan, 40M, and our parents had even supported their relationship. Have you ever watched a movie where everything seems to be going well until it all goes wrong? My life was like that. I was making good money as a senior software developer at a rapidly expanding computer business, had recently purchased a home in a desirable Boston suburb, and was getting married to the woman I believed to be my true love. Over the course of 5 years, Alex and I had planned our future, built a life together. And I thought we were in agreement on everything. Alex was a marketing executive representing her company when I first met her at a tech convention. She was intelligent, driven, and had a knack for making every space she entered seem brighter. Our mutual passion for independent video games and esoteric science fiction films made us click right away. We conversed for 6 hours on our first date until the restaurant staff essentially had to eject us. In retrospect, I can see all the red flags I ignored because I was so enamored with her. Her treatment of service staff ought to have been the first warning sign. On the surface, she was always courteous, but her tone was tinged with contempt. Then there were the smaller lies, which were initially little ones, such as claiming to be out with friends when she was actually working late. She had an amazing capacity to make everything about her needs. Never apologized when she damaged my feelings, and persisted in getting what she wanted. However, I dismissed it all by reminding myself that relationships necessitate compromise and that no one is flawless. My family's dynamics ought to have been an additional red flag. I work as an IT professional, and I'm doing okay, nothing great. In contrast, my brother Nathan is the perfect child who is incapable of doing anything wrong. He is a successful businessman who, after graduating from college, founded his own IT company, which by his early 30s had grown to be worth millions of dollars. Why can't you be more like Nathan? Or Nathan would have done it this way, were common refrains when I was growing up. My parents, who are both in their 60s, never attempted to conceal their partiality. I recall a Christmas when I was 15 years old. My parents' old coffee machine was breaking, so I spent the entire year saving money to get them a really excellent one. After arriving late for Christmas dinner, Nathan gave them an envelope and declared that he had purchased a cruise for them. They spent the remainder of the evening savoring cruise brochures while my meticulously wrapped coffee machine sat forgotten beneath the tree. That was only one of many examples. Every move I made was questioned because it wasn't what Nathan would have done, and every accomplishment I made was evaluated against his success. I should have seen Alex's eyes light up when Nathan told her about his business endeavors when I first introduced her to my family. I should have seen how she progressively began to get closer to him during family get-togethers and how their discussions seemed to become more in-depth and personal. However, I was too preoccupied with organizing the wedding and envisioning our future together to notice it. Like all previous important days, the wedding day began as usual. I felt both anxious and eager. Alex had fallen in love with the gorgeous vineyard location we had selected, which was outside the city and offered a breathtaking view of the mountains. The flowers, the music, and the meticulously prepared meal that had taken months to perfect were all ready. My phone rang that morning while I was standing in my hotel room, fiddling with my tie for the 100th time. Alex informed me she couldn't marry me in a chilly, almost clinical voice. Then the actual bombshell arrived. Nathan was her genuine love. She sounded no apologies. She merely stated that she needed to follow her intuition. As she described how she and Nathan had been dating for months, I stood there with my hands shaking so much that I could not hold the phone. She hoped that one day I would comprehend that they had attempted but were unable to fight their emotions. The worst part is that I found out my folks already knew. When I arrived at the location to handle the repercussions, that morning, Nathan had informed them. They were too busy attempting to manage the situation to spare me disgrace, to warn me. With the bold suggestion that perhaps it was best. My mother, Catherine, 62F, said, "You wouldn't want to marry someone who doesn't love you." My father simply nodded, more concerned with the opinions of their golf club acquaintances than with his son's struggles. The hours that followed were a haze of cancelled merchants, perplexed patrons, and pitying glances while I sat in a back room, still wearing my wedding suit, trying to comprehend how my entire life had fallen apart in one morning. My best man attempted to take care of the practical details. My parents informed me that there had been an unfortunate situation. The wedding had been cancelled after some guests had already come, all dressed to the nines. I didn't realize the full scope of their betrayal until months later. I learned that my parents had actively pushed Alex to leave me for Nathan through a mutual acquaintance. They had assured her that she would have a better life with Nathan and that she was too good for me, promising to provide for her financially if she decided to choose him over me. For months, they had been planning this behind my back while grinning at me and assisting with the wedding preparations. The buddies shared with me text conversations in which my mother set up accidental meetings between Nathan and Alex, giving them chances to hang out. Alex had been informed by my mother that Nathan had always harbored feelings for her, and that they would be a better fit. Knowing how significant Alex's career goals were, my parents even offered to help her launch her own marketing consultancy if she decided to go with Nathan. I walked away from everything that day. I moved to a distant state, quit my job, and stopped communicating with my family. I updated my email, my phone number, everything. I couldn't bear to live in the house I had purchased with all the memories, so I let the bank foreclose on it. The awkward interactions with mutual acquaintances, who were at a loss for words, and the pitying glances from coworkers who had been invited to the wedding were too much for me to bear. My therapist, whom I began seeing to cope with the trauma of it all, was the only one I continued to communicate with. She assisted me in realizing that what I had gone through was a significant betrayal by everyone who was meant to love and care for me, not just a failed relationship. We unraveled how my parents' partiality had influenced my relationships and sense of self as we worked through the years of family dynamics that had brought us to this place. Although they haven't been easy, the last 2 years have been essential. I rented a modest apartment in a peaceful area, got a new job at another computer business in Denver, and began gradually re-establishing my life. Through a local hiking group, I gained new friends who welcomed me for who I am now and didn't know anything about my background. I began meditation, worked on my mental health, and discovered how to be content on my own. I even hesitantly resumed dating, just casual dinners and coffee meetings, nothing serious. Every date made it clearer to me that Alex's behavior and the toxic relationships in my family were more important than my personal value. I discovered how to follow my gut and recognize warning signs in others rather than justifying them. I poured myself into new tasks at work, which led to a promotion and the appreciation of my coworkers. For the first time in my life, Nathan's accomplishments were not being used to gauge my own. I could just produce my best work and be myself, and that would be plenty. My newfound acquaintances appreciated me for who I am, not for what they believed I ought to be. I believed the chapter of my life was finally over. I had a good group of friends, was doing well at work, and was even considering purchasing a home once more. Without the looming specter of my family's expectations, I had established a new life for myself, one that was based on my own terms. Then Alex arrived at my door last week. First update. Last week. I nearly didn't recognize Alex when I opened my door and saw her standing there. I had lost the slick, self-assured marketing executive I had known. Someone who appeared to have not slept well in weeks took her place. Her once flawless makeup was unable to cover up the heavy circles under her eyes, and her fancy attire had been swapped out for a simple sweater and trousers. When I allowed her in, she was trembling, not from the chilly Denver night, but from what I soon discovered to be ongoing anxiety. She told me everything while we sat in my living room, which is where I've been reconstructing my life for the past 2 years. As my parents had predicted, her marriage to Nathan had begun as a happily ever after. He lavished her with costly presents, helped her launch her own marketing firm, and purchased her a home in Boston's most affluent neighborhood. However, the dream soon became a nightmare. It turns out that, underneath his endearing facade, Nathan is precisely who I always believed him to be. Everyone's favorite wealthy, charismatic businessman is a skilled manipulator. Alex talked about how he gradually took over every part of her life behind closed doors. It started out with suggestions on her business choices. Demands concerning who she could collaborate with followed. He eventually took a seat on the board of her business and was given the last word on all contracts. She described the gaslighting to me, including how he would move items around their home and claim she was responsible. How he would contradict their conversations from a few hours prior, and how he would tell their acquaintances she was losing her mind any time she attempted to confront him. The worst thing, everything was made possible by our parents, particularly our mother, Catherine. Alex wiped away her tears and remarked, "Your mom tells me I'm lucky to have Nathan and that I need to try harder to make him happy. That's just how successful men protect their interests." She responded when I informed her about his plan to steal everything if I left. Hearing about their son, my nephew, who is now entangled in all of this, was more heartbreaking than Alex's tragedy. Alex claims that even though he is only 18 months old, Nathan is already acting in a domineering manner toward him. Nathan has very stringent restrictions regarding everything, including the baby's playthings, colors, and when he can sleep. If the infant cries during his crucial calls, he becomes irate and accuses Alex of not managing him properly. She started crying when I brought up the subject of a potential divorce. Nathan has stated unequivocally that he will ruin her if she leaves. He has the resources, the contacts, and above all, the backing of our parents. He has vowed to deny her custody of their son, force her to pay for her legal bills, and make sure she never again works in marketing. She came to me for that reason, to testify in court. She needs someone who is aware of the reality about our family, someone who can discuss Nathan's actual character, the pattern of deception, and the enabling actions of our parents. She believes that my evidence could support her cause, particularly with relation to custody. "No," I replied. I didn't argue or yell. I simply informed her that I couldn't assist. I'll probably never forget the expression on her face. The difficulty is that I've learned in therapy for the past 2 years that I'm not in charge of solving other people's problems. I put a lot of effort into setting limits and removing my family's poisonous influence from my life. My phone was overflowing with texts the following day. News of Alex's visit had somehow spread. Suddenly, I had a lot to say from people I had not spoken to since the wedding fiasco. They referred to me as cowardly, selfish, and uncaring. A particularly nasty note about how I was proving my family right, that I was too weak and self-centered to step up when it mattered, was emailed to me by Alex's former maid of honor. The level of hypocrisy is astounding. 2 years ago, none of these folks defended me when I was the one in pain. None of them gave assistance or pointed out the manipulation by my family. They now asked me to put my painstakingly reconstructed life and mental health at risk in order to support the woman who deceived me. One message struck especially hard. "Your nephew, an innocent child, is involved," a mutual friend wrote. "Alex doesn't deserve to suffer for everything he did to you. And that's the reason I can't sleep at night. That young boy is on my mind all the time. Being born into this chaos was not anything he requested. None of this was his choice. Alex is growing up in a home that might leave him permanently scarred if what he says is accurate, which I think it is, based on my experience with Nathan. I understand what it's like to be raised in Nathan's shadow. Will things go worse for his son? However, becoming involved would require me to reintegrate with my family. It would entail dealing with Nathan once more, enduring the manipulation of our parents, and possibly being the object of my brother's retaliation. I might lose everything I've worked so hard to build over the last 2 years. I am at a crossroads. Do I uphold the limits I've worked so hard to create, putting my stability and mental health first? Or should I put everything on the line to save a defenseless child from the same toxic family dynamics that harmed me? To be honest, I have no idea what to do. My therapist advises me to carefully consider what I can contribute in a practical way without endangering my own health. However, every time I attempt to reason with it, I see the image of that young boy. I need your opinion, Reddit. Am I being self-centered by not offering assistance, or should I defend the tranquility I've at last discovered? What exactly would it look like to assist my nephew without getting sucked into the family conflict again? Second update. A week has passed since my last report, and things have become worse in unexpected ways. My family seems desperate to pull me back into their insanity, even though I hoped that ignoring everything would make it go away. Nathan sent me an email yesterday morning. My stomach dropped when I saw his name in my inbox. It was a brief but menacing message. I've heard that our ex-fiancée came to you in tears. If you know what's best for you, stay out of family affairs. It's been 2 years since you were involved. Don't change anything. For a long time, I stared at those words, feeling a mixture of sorrow and, shockingly, fury. The ostensibly wealthy and successful brother is threatening his own sibling because he fears losing power. If it weren't so depressing. The irony would be funny. However, Nathan wasn't the only one who chose to end the 2-year silence. I was at work when our mother, Catherine, called. Some part of me still freezes when I see Mom on my caller ID, even if I should have ignored it. The same tone Mother used to try to control me as a child. Her voice sounded sickly sweet. Without even saying hello, she began. Sweetheart, I know Alex came to see you. You must realize that although she is going through a tough moment, it does not imply that she is thinking rationally. Nathan is making every effort to be a decent father and spouse. She changed her strategy when I didn't answer. Your brother's company is currently at a pivotal moment. Everything he's built might be destroyed by this divorce foolishness. He deserves better from his own brother, don't you think? I was able to find my voice at last. As if I were entitled to better treatment from my own family. There was an overwhelming quiet on the other end. The guilt trip followed. What's best for both of our guys has always been our goal. Families must keep together, even though parents make errors. At this moment, Nathan needs you to be the bigger person. I ended the call. My phone began to vibrate with texts from members of my extended family. A few minutes later, Catherine had apparently rallied the whole family after the wedding fiasco. My aunts, uncles, and cousins, people who hadn't bothered to check on me, became quite worried about family unity. A cousin wrote, Neither of your parents is growing any younger. Do you want them to worry about raising their grandchild in a dysfunctional household for the rest of their lives? Another message was sent. True men don't harbor resentment. Be the larger person. My father's sister sent me the most vexing message. Although your brother erred, he granted Alex all of her wishes. You're supporting her conduct, and she's just being ungrateful. It's amazing how they've created this story in which I'm the bad guy for not supporting their idealized family image. They will disregard any proof of Nathan's abusive behavior because they are so committed to his image as the successful son. Then something that truly shocked me occurred. Tonight, Nathan was contacted by a former coworker who still works with him. He claimed to have seen several unsettling things happen at work, including Nathan hurling explosive outbursts at staff members, threatening them covertly, and falsifying financial records. He claims that a number of workers have left because of the toxic workplace. But Nathan's attorneys have them bound by non-disclosure agreements. According to this coworker, if I assisted Alex, perhaps others might be more inclined to speak up about Nathan's actions. He did. However, cautioned me that Nathan had been asking questions about my new life in Denver, such as my address and place of employment. The danger is obvious. Nathan will target my new life if I assist Alex. He has the means to seriously challenge me on a personal and professional level, and as always, our parents would be there for him. I've put forth too much effort to create this tranquil life. My therapist says I've made amazing strides in establishing healthy boundaries. I have true friends who embrace me for who I am. And my career is going great. It scares me to think of losing all that. However, my colleagues' remarks about further possible witnesses continue to cross my mind. This is about more than just Alex and my nephew. If what he says is accurate, dozens of people might be harmed by Nathan's misuse of authority. I've been recording everything, even the intimidating email, the deceptive phone call, and the flying monkey attacks from family members. Although she tells me that I'm not required to burn myself alive to keep others warm, my therapist says this might be significant. Not only should I assist Alex, but I also have a moral duty to call out Nathan's actions before he causes more harm. But am I prepared for the impending storm? I need your advice, Reddit. How can you oppose someone who has all the resources, family support, and power on their side? And is it worth putting everything I've rebuilt at risk in order to act morally? Third update. I struggled with what to do for several restless nights after my last update, though not in the manner anyone had anticipated. The matter has settled itself. I want to tell you everything that transpired and the reasons behind my decisions. I must first clarify a crucial point. I had a breakthrough session with my therapist following Catherine's deceptive call and Nathan's threatening email. We talked about how my family has always followed the same pattern: incite a problem, put pressure on me to resolve it, and then utilize my assistance to keep their toxic system in place. She made it clear to me that getting directly involved would only make this cycle worse. But she also made a very important point: there are ways to help that don't involve me re-engaging with my family's manipulation or sacrificing my mental health. That's when I decided what to do. I sent Child Protective Services a thorough anonymous report. I didn't make this choice lightly. I spent 3 days compiling all of the information I had, including screenshots of the family's nasty texts, emails, text messages, and Nathan's threatening letter. I incorporated all of Alex's information regarding Nathan's domineering actions toward their son. I described how our family has a history of condoning abuse and hiding issues in order to keep up appearances. The report covered more ground than merely the current state of affairs. I gave background information on Nathan's manipulative tendencies and how our parents have traditionally condoned his actions. I gave specific examples, such as how they concealed his college drunk driving episode, how they settled a former employee's harassment lawsuit, and how they have continuously exploited their resources and connections to shield him from repercussions. Additionally, I sent proof of possible financial irregularities that my former coworker had brought up. I thought this gave a more complete picture of Nathan's personality and the depth of his manipulation, even though it might not have a direct bearing on the CPS investigation. Waiting was the most difficult part. Since I was reporting anonymously, I knew I wouldn't receive updates on the status of CPS investigations, which take time. However, I had at least taken a step that would benefit my nephew while still respecting my personal boundaries. Then things began to move more quickly than I had anticipated. Nathan sent me a flurry of angry messages 3 days after I submitted the report. His emails became more and more erratic. "You think you can hide behind anonymity? I know it was you. You've just made the biggest mistake of your life. I'll make sure you never work in tech again. You think you're safe in Denver? Watch your back. You're dead to this family. Remember that you chose this." Catherine had a different but no less informative reaction. "I'm still troubled by the voicemail she left. How could you do this to your own family? We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us? Nathan is devastated. They're investigating him like a common criminal. His reputation could be ruined. I hope you're happy with yourself. What's interesting is that none of the accusations were refuted by any of them. They were upset with me because I dared to reveal the truth, not because I made unfounded accusations. After mostly remaining mute during this ordeal, my father suddenly revealed his actual nature in a letter. He threatened to remove me from his will if I didn't fix this situation immediately. His lawyer wrote the letter. I recognized the hypocrisy of threatening to disown someone who had already left the family. Then Alex sent a surprise message. Hers was shorter than the others and had a distinct tone. I know it was you. Thank you. I'm sorry for everything. I was more affected by those 9 words than by all of Nathan's threats put together. They were the first sincere admission of guilt I had ever gotten from anyone connected to this catastrophe. I learned through rumors that Alex had the leverage she required. Because of CPS's participation, Nathan's threats of assuming complete custody were less significant, as an inquiry was still underway. While the inquiry is ongoing, she was able to obtain emergency temporary custody of their kid. The response from the family has been explosive. The complete force of flying monkeys has been unleashed. My inbox is overflowing with messages from distant cousins I haven't spoken to in years, accusing me of betraying my own blood and ruining the family. On social media, former family friends are expressing their sadness at the way jealousy splits families apart in ambiguous, passive-aggressive condolence posts. The problem is that I'm not as affected by their responses as I used to be. I've never had this level of clarity before. Thanks to 2 years of therapy and self-work. Their manipulating techniques are evident to me. Every threat, guilt trip, and effort to get me to reconsider my choice only serves to prove that I chose the right one. My family is upset because I refuse to fulfill my designated part in their dysfunction, not because I have harmed them. My therapist pointed out that I violated the pattern they have been using for decades by opting to safeguard my nephew through legitimate procedures instead of taking part in their cover-up. The fallout has been dramatic but illuminating. I've had to react to the circumstance by taking a number of measures to make sure they were aware of any threats. I first alerted the security people at my employer about the probable harassment in order to safeguard myself against any possible reprisals. I also started working with a lawyer. I've had to keep my social media presence totally secret and bolster my personal security measures because of the situation. I didn't want to perform these actions, but they were essential for my security and comfort. But I've also received unanticipated help. A number of cousins who had previously remained silent have privately expressed their pride in me for confronting the family. I've received calls from 2 of Nathan's former workers who want to provide statements in favor of Alex after hearing the whole story. Even some old friends who had previously condemned my choice have changed their minds. Above all, I am comfortable with my choice. Yes, there may be repercussions. Nathan may attempt to undermine my career. The family may actually carry out their threats. However, I'm not basing my decisions on my fear of their reactions for the first time in my life. You're missing the point. Whoever messaged me and said that I'm taking the coward's way out by reporting anonymously rather than confronting them personally, this has nothing to do with conflict or retaliation. It was about figuring out how to support them without putting my own mental health at risk or being entangled in their poisonous relationship again. I have no idea what will occur next. Custody disputes can last many months or even years, and CPS investigations can take many different paths. However, I am aware that I upheld my personal boundaries while doing everything I could to protect an innocent youngster. I discovered a technique to assist without having to burn myself alive to keep others warm. Thank you to everyone who has been reading this narrative and giving guidance. I learned from your encouragement that sometimes doing the right thing doesn't mean being the most dramatic or combative. Sometimes it comes down to figuring out how to protect yourself while yet bringing about change. Keep in mind that you don't have to choose between defending yourself and assisting others if you find yourself in a similar circumstance. Even if it isn't immediately apparent, there is frequently a middle ground. Furthermore, just because you were born into poisonous family systems doesn't mean you have to keep them up. Let me conclude by saying I once believed that the worst thing that could happen to me was losing my fiancée to my brother 2 years ago. I now see that it served as the wake-up call I needed to escape a dysfunctional family structure. Your lowest point can occasionally serve as the starting point for a better existence. My last update will be this one. I believe I made the proper decision for myself and my nephew, regardless of what occurs next. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. My family is trying to make my golden child sister the bride at my wedding. I'm planning my revenge. I'm getting married, and my family wants my golden child sister to go down the aisle in white. I'm going to take my revenge. Here I am, writing this lengthy story on my vacation, but it seems cathartic to finally get it out. My hubby is more enthused about this than the resort drinks. This is a throwaway because I don't have a Reddit account, and my spouse, the Reddit fanatic, has stated that he does not want this affiliated with him. As for why the Reddit person isn't writing this, he said that because it's my family, I should be the one to write the tale. But he's over my shoulder to help out. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not sure how this works, but I do not give permission for this to be reposted anywhere. I believe it is vital to provide some context to explain how this behavior escalated, and why our responses were as they were. I am sorry for the long read. My parents have always shown more affection for my sister. I do not mean in subtle ways either. If my sister accuses me of something, they will believe her and punish me. They wouldn't believe me if I accused her, even if I had undeniable evidence. They'd still give her a lighter punishment, while simultaneously scolding me. My birthday cake had to be the flavor she preferred, hers did not. My parents always denied knowing I disliked that style of cake. They always paid a little more for her than for me. We went where she wanted, even though it was an occasion that was supposed to be about me. My sister grew up pampered and disliked me. She used me as a punching bag. She generally ignored me at first. But when we were early teenagers, things got pretty ugly. I'm not sure what caused it, but she lost all of her friends, and her conduct deteriorated. Did her buddies relocate? Did they leave her because she was mean? I don't know because we were never close, and my parents loved to brag about her accomplishments while never mentioning any problems. Unlike me, they enjoyed continuously pointing out my weaknesses as taunting material. I just knew she had none because we went to the same school. And I observed she was no longer roaming around with other people. Anyway, she didn't have any friends, I did. I used to be fairly popular. My sister noticed this. And I went from being an occasional punching bag to someone she despised, somebody she had to eliminate at all costs. She began accusing me of more of everything. She charged my friends with numerous transgressions. My parents stopped letting me hang around with anyone. Their explanations ranged from "they're not decent people," according to your sister, to "why are you attempting to leave us? Why won't you enjoy family time and be like your sister?" Extended family gave me something to prevent total solitude. My cousins and I got along despite minor age disparities. Most of my relatives resided in the same town. They invited me over to something at one occasion. I regrettably said, "I'm not allowed to go anywhere." I don't recall what my child self, without thinking through it, said that it was because I wasn't allowed to have friends since my sister didn't have any. That got to the grown-ups, who supposedly split my parents apart later. It was worth it, even though I was grounded, as if I had someplace to go, for a month and was chastised for lying. After that, they let me have some freedom, and my sister started a different school. She begged to be changed, and I suppose the humiliation of extended family knowing her social standing was terrible. Though it cost more since the school was further away, my parents complied right away. At the new school, though she befriended others, she never returned to the former norm of largely ignoring me. She never let me go. I suppose she was enraged that I informed our family she had no friends and felt the power of how badly she could screw with me. my life continued to be miserable. Her pals would visit and harass me, and my parents would label it light teasing. My parents were terrible hosts to friends, so I never invited anyone over. My sister would accuse them of pilfering items, and they would believe her. My parents never dared to do any of that to relatives, hence I did get close to my cousins. I then landed my first boyfriend. Though my parents pushed, I absolutely did not want to bring him home. We were split once, and he came to find me, informing me that my sister was flirting with him. She meant she arrived in underfitting clothes, batted her lashes severely, and began telling him how horrible I was and how good she was. Angry, he bolted off to locate me. Naturally, my sister told my parents a different story, that my boyfriend had tried to flirt with her, but she had naturally objected since how could she do that to me? Try to guess what my folks thought. My guy was not perfect, but I accepted him right away for a cruel reason, but keep in mind that I was a teenage victim of harsh treatment back then. Originally, I disliked my sister as much as I hated myself. I was extremely resentful and moody. Having that disclaimer clear the path, let us now discuss appearances. They weren't relevant, therefore. I hadn't discussed them yet. Since my sister loved displaying love by food, giving you more food, buying sweets, etc., my sister was also overweight. My parents were overweight as well. Whereas I am not now and was not then, actually. I have always been really slim. As punishment sometimes, I was given no snacks or treats. Obviously, personality is what counts, weight is not. Even then, though my sister was already spoiled and unpleasant, she never learned to work for anything since she could demand and my parents would supply. Hence, even her flirting efforts were awful. Not to mention that she didn't seem like some beautiful model. Not even my self-conscious young self thought my boyfriend would attempt to cheat on me with her. My parents forbade me from dating such a bad lad nonetheless. Though it was difficult, I did try to keep going in secret until the relationship broke. I did have another boyfriend, but once more. My sister claimed he was flirting with her when he turned down her attempts. Once more, my parents believed her. I attempted to point out how this happened again, but they concluded that it indicated I was incapable of making wise decisions and constantly choosing lousy mates. The relationship fluttered out once more. Unable to manage the Romeo and Juliet scenario. In high school, I would eventually be called names as I was okay with making out with guys and things but refused to form relationships. Luckily, it never got back to my parents or sister. Now, my sister did bring one man home over all this period until he stopped coming up. My parents spent every second reminding me how terrific he was, and why I couldn't be like my sister, and get myself someone like that. He was paraded with pride. He became suddenly a cunning bastard who misled my sister, well then, and the unfair treatment carried on. She had more spending money at this time. Her curfews were far better than mine. And she could go any place at any time, whereas I was not free to. If I brought it up, my parents would claim it was because she was older. But I still didn't get the same treatment until I reached that age. When I pointed it out, they denied they ever stated that or claimed it was because I couldn't be trusted like she was, citing my poor judgment against my partners and friends as evidence. Time passed, and my sister's graduation was approaching. She had no scholarship or anything. She was admitted into a college, not a particularly esteemed one. Once more, I'm not sure which universities she ever tried for, as only her successes were reported to me. Hence, I can't say how poorly she was turned down. She had poor marks in the classroom, though, since we would always celebrate any time she received a B. Usually, I would obtain good marks. But my parents objected to celebrating since I always got those and asked what celebration would be appropriate. My parents assured my sister they would pay for everything and naturally made a lot of fanfare for her. She would be leaving, so relieving me. Not that it would simplify my life. Every other weekend, she would always return home. Still, some item would vanish from her room, or some other problem she would consider bringing up to make my life terrible. My curfews were still rigorous, etc. Finally, my mother came to discuss my approaching graduation. My sister is 1 year older than I am. She advised me to start working right away after graduation and wait until my sister completed college to see if they could afford anything for me, since they were paying for her schooling and had no money for mine. Oh, and if I stayed at home, I would have to pay rent, part of the bills, and all my own stuff. I mentioned I might apply for school loans. That is because I had such poor judgment, and they would evaluate whether or not a college was worth my getting into debt for, given their extreme compassion for me. I didn't ask. But I'm not sure how they would ban me from acquiring loans. Scholarships were not mentioned. They never believed in my ability either, and had no idea what my grades were. Now, I did not blink at all. I said just okay. My mother continued to push, plainly not expecting that. Perhaps she wanted me to act out so they might have justification for never ever paying for my college. I only stated, though, that I appreciated their concern and that I understood their viewpoint. Later, my dad tried the same, but I too refrained from showing emotions. You see, I never had any aspirations regarding my schooling. After a lifetime of their horrible upbringing, I knew they would find a means to avoid paying for mine and ruin my life. Working and waiting for my sister to graduate never convinced me they would finally pay. I had long been getting ready for college. I had plenty of time to study. My friendships were few, and I could hardly get out, and I studied as I saw my sole opportunity for freedom in college. When the time arrived, I worked assiduously and was awarded a scholarship, not to some place like Ivy League or anything like law or medical school, but it was a good enough course in a solid university with a full scholarship. Knowing my sister would object and try to stop me using my parents, I posted my success on social media. I told them at the same moment, even made myself thank them in the post under duress. Now they would have to explain to the family why not, so they could not stop me from leaving. At first, they were even somewhat proud and boasted about it. Then, I suppose my sister arrived, and they shifted gears, even asking whether I was sure I wanted to go. They let out that my sister wasn't doing well in college. Since she was brighter and had better judgment than me, I would suffer more. I certainly stayed to my guns, though they couldn't do anything. They were not happy. My savior was college. I began to find happiness. I still visited on holidays and such and spoke with my parents, but since they refused to pay for anything, I could explain not going a lot due to money. I skipped introducing any man to them during this period, and my sister quit attending college. She didn't graduate since, once more, they would have made a hoopla over it. She returned home, paying no rent or bills, but it's different. My parents noted she began working for the same company as my mother. Clearly because of her string pulling. I bought all of this to feel proud. Oh well, practically there. I swear about this time, I met my husband. You know those folks that claim, if I were in X situation, I would have done something. The kind that actually does is my hubby. I'm the type that is meek and a doormat in every circumstance. Then, I find myself unable to sleep at night, wishing I had done something, considered something clever to say, etc. It is me that finds myself crying uncontrollably when I am furious. My hubby is the one that instantly claps back. He enjoys resolving drama as much as its production. If he doesn't react right away to a minor, you should start worrying, as he won't forgive and forget. He is merely acting in a worse manner in payback. Though he wanted me to post on a nuclear revenge board as well, he insisted what we did wasn't nuclear. People were perplexed when I got acquainted with him, yet it didn't mean I didn't enjoy it. Since, thanks to my background most likely, I was incapable of acting like him. My husband treats people kindly as long as they treat him the same way, and I adore that he does what I cannot. When we talked about marriage, we agreed that our budget would not allow us much interest in the ceremony. Instead, we would much prefer to spend on a dream vacation to Europe for our honeymoon. Regarding where to conduct it, we chose my hometown since his family was scattered and mine was still primarily concentrated there. We weren't living too far off either, so we could handle things by going on occasional weekend-long visits. There was also some work flexibility, so should it be necessary, we could spend some time in my hometown. A few months later, we issued the save the date and the engagement announcement. Well, at this time, my folks naturally insisted they meet my man. I wanted to reject but was having trouble growing a spine. The distance had caused me to wonder, maybe my folks weren't all that horrible. When I told my spouse, he looked like I canceled Christmas. At least I would guarantee they never left him alone. See, he had been getting ready for this. He even purchased a top-notch recorder he could hide in a pocket to capture everything. Driven, he considered all the ways he might turn down my sister's efforts. Offend her, then forward the tape of her attempts to my family. So, out he went, alone and eager to see them. Then, he returned later, ecstatic. Babe, darling. The terrible things they yearn for would astound you. Babe, there are so many possibilities. We can screw them over so horribly. Though I wanted to hear the recording since I was perplexed. He wisely advised me it would be preferable to listen to him first, otherwise, I might misinterpret him. He visited, and instead of the flirting, my sister and parents sat him down. My judgment, etc. They declared they were ready to pay for my wedding on one condition: my sister would walk down the aisle first in a wedding dress. After some grumbling about not being comfortable with him, their justification was that it was only fair if my sister got at least the experience of it at my venue, with pictures being shot in the dress, and she would have a cake later too, etc. It was not okay for a younger sister to marry first. My husband will type his part now. Hey, here's a resentful hubby. When his lover is mocked, hell hath no wrath like a pro-revenge. Instantaneous karma, nuclear revenge lurker. Having said that, even if my wife, who is now my wife, paints me as this quick-witted guy, I admit my neurons all but short-circuited when those people legit propose like some sort of fantastic present. Even Troy would rather take in the horse a second time, methinks. After my brain reset, I did have a huge repertoire of insults ready to pour forth. But something in my soul whispered in my ear like the devil, "String these along." I then claimed I had to consider how my fiancée back then would respond and then hurried out before I could reveal my sinister intention. Now back to me, the wife. With a smile on his face, my husband then truly related how my parents wanted even my wedding to be about my sister, and had the recording to back it up. I looked surprised. The distance had eased their treatment of me. And I reasoned, even they wouldn't travel so far. Fortunately, my husband's insistence on the angle of revenge prevented me from entering a negative headspace. We had a great time brainstorming ways to screw them over, ideas ranging from shockingly crazy to what we felt was practical. When we settled on a strategy, we then phoned his much more level-headed sibling. It included 2 venue addresses, giving the incorrect one, etc. Level-headed brother chastised us for this, though. Although he admitted he would never be able to persuade us against revenge, at least he showed us anything like that would be difficult to execute. Among our other suggestions, several ran the risk of getting us sued. We finally decided on the most benign course of action: follow our agreement, then pay security and forbid her access. Clearly, if that was it, that would not be pro-revenge. Mostly my hubby, but here goes. Since he wants me to do the honors. Just crucial to note, everything he accomplished was already covered with me and reflected our shared opinions. He returned to my parents, asked questions, then concluded I wouldn't be down with it. He didn't see the problem, though, and his desire for family to remain intact would be in line with supporting them through that process. He noted that I dislike conflict, hence, if I were shocked with it, I might not act out in front of all the people. Conversely, Mary is really important, so who knew if I would lose control? He, therefore, proposed a compromise. They would assist with expenses. In this sense, I would be even more under pressure to say nothing, since not only would we be in public with our families there, but I would be appreciative of their help, which would calm me. It was acceptable, as my grown sister started skipping with delight, actually like a child, while my parents seemed surprised. Importantly, my husband also claimed that, due to some horrible judgment in lovers in the past, these phrases were all my idea, and I'm so proud of using their words against them. Ha! I was distrustful and controlling and wanted to check his phone and whatnot to guarantee he wasn't cheating on me. This made it absolutely necessary that nothing of this strategy was ever documented. He would go over to their house to discuss any topic related to my sister coming down the aisle before me. And so started the months of lies in which my husband and I were milking my parents and sister while they thought they were fooling me. How can this be achieved? Of course, my parents wanted input in everything, not pay for the wedding and lay quiet. My husband would persuade me to let go of some things that meant a lot to me, like the music and color palette, so keeping me in line, but everything else was fair game. We never really cared for the ceremony to start with. We would visit SE to review the drink and menu selections. We would then accept the lowest or second lowest price choice. Then my husband would surreptitiously bring my sister there to also try it. Then San remarked, "It's a pity we don't want to abuse my parents' goodwill, so we wouldn't get the best option." Cue my sister insisting my parents pay for the best. After that, my parents paid for the most costly, and would reassure me not to worry. The same was done with the flowers and photographer. My husband unhappily told my sister that I wanted some other tasteless flowers after handing her a bouquet of the ones we wanted. Cue my parents informing me they would pay for such flowers and wanted us to accompany them. About the wedding dress, we ran across a small hitch, though. It wasn't my style and wouldn't look well on me. My parents wanted me to wear an awful dress, okay, not overtly hideous. Our idea was to say, okay, and then not use it, but my mom messaged me about it. So there would be evidence, I said. Okay. We had to follow me steadfastly and in text, rejecting going over there. My husband stated he would see what he could do. My sister advised destroying my intended dress so I would have to wear the other one. He answered as though he agreed. They truly kept communications outside any text throughout all of this. We made sure that happened by having me respond any time my sister tried messaging my husband. They believed that and never risked anything in writing, since this confirmed the "I'm controlling and neurotic" allegations my spouse was making. Though I'm such a doormat that the idea of being represented as controlling and dangerous is rather humorous to me. Maybe some individuals might not appreciate the idea of their partner going around and talking poorly of them to family. I encouraged him to do it. I suppose I have a distorted sense of humor. Laughing here. Oh, and my sister did try to flirt with him, but he responded conflicted. Also, to truly sell that he was with them, though he never told them we hired security, my husband would act to tell them information without my knowing. That was really humorous. Having really thought about a courthouse wedding to save money for our honeymoon, my husband and I ended up having an ostentatious, costly wedding and hardly spent $1 from my parents. We dubbed it back pay for emotional damages. LOL. I believe my husband, okay, he just acknowledged I'm right, was more enjoying the whole deceiving them than he did organizing our wedding. Lel. Here we are. Not as though I would have imagined it imaginable to see a man grinning at the idea of squandering his whole Saturday driving to talk wedding preparations with his in-laws. Not too far off was the day my parents, sister, and husband had devised a strategy whereby one waits until everyone is seated. The bride always arrives late. Hence they would have my sister arrive at that exact moment to avoid me seeing her and trying to stop it, and she would walk down the aisle. It would be too late to act by the time I found out. Regarding my dress, we preserved some of the extra fabric from my dress changes. My husband brought that to my parents' house, My sister still resides with them even now, and presented it as evidence he had destroyed the garment. Then he stated he had to get back to me as I was fuming, and he had to cool me down. She would see them at the wedding. Initially, we made sure to keep our actual security under wraps. All the visitors and my parents could see as they came was a woman with a name list to cross-reference. We brought out security, a man looking like a bodyguard, only once my parents came and sat down. We advised him not to let anyone, especially my sister, in and even agreed on a nice tip should he fail to disclose our scheme. Not too long later, the time arrived. My dad went and encouraged people to start since my parents received a text saying my sister was less than 5 minutes away. Originally instructed to follow his direction. My bridesmaids obeyed without consulting me. My dad waited at the door as though waiting for me. After everyone descended and replaced each other. One buddy not in the wedding party texted me throughout this to get ready. This was because people would notice if my spouse or bridesmaids, etc., pulled out a phone and started texting. This friend was in on the plot. She's my husband's friend, and she didn't care about being a bridesmaid or anything. She was ready to assist their drama, as he is. The bridal song started playing. As soon as my dad settled in, the doors opened, and I followed in. At me being there, my dad became pale. He tried peering behind me, but he couldn't see the venue entrance from where we were. So he was unable to ascertain what happened to my sister. His phone then started to ring. Her was the caller ID. I noticed he merely left me there, whispered something came up, and ran. There were gasps and uncertainty. The buddy in on it inquired loudly what had happened. Lying, I said in a sad voice, he told me it wasn't supposed to be me there. Although he said nothing. My husband and I decided that I should tell him to appear the worst possible should he dare leave me. Regarding the tears, I wish I could claim it was only my great acting, but no. Despite all, a part of me didn't think he would go as far as to abandon me there. Though only a clever joke, I felt the sister thing was untrue. Unknown, I was hurt, still am, so I was truly trying not to cry. Then the friend yelled, "What did he mean by it shouldn't be you?" So that as many people as possible might hear and disseminate it. "I will go and check," she remarked quickly and hurried off. We decided to do this so she might create hell with the security and block my dad from returning to halt the ceremony or whatever. My mother also departed. Eventually, my husband's dad hurried over at this point and grabbed my arm. He had been informed he might have to. I started to smile seeing him sprint to me. Walking down the aisle to whispers. I listened to people talk about what transpired. Some presumably left to also check. Still, all was good when I got to my hubby, joking that my depressed expression was so real I deserved an Oscar. And not to worry, he would sweep them over the coals for what they did, lol, and help me feel better. We tied the knot without incident. My parents did not return. During the celebration, I did observe a lot of individuals leaving and then returning. None of them ventured to tell me what was happening. My husband left after someone came to speak in his ear. After some while, he returned with a stormy look but whispered in my ear that he had to hide somewhere before he broke character and started laughing, lol. What happened is it went right from friends, relatives, the security guard, and my spouse. The following is the combined story I got later. My sister did show up wearing a bridal dress. By our arrangement, the security turned her away since there was already a bride. He said she should be in the incorrect place. Indeed, we gave him quite good tips as promised, claiming he never knew him. Thus he couldn't be working there. My dad went there and attempted threatening him with the police. The security agreed to the police, as he was engaged by us in performing his duties. By then, my dad knew it would be too late and tried to insist he let my sister inside. By now, the friend arrived, began yelling and disparaging my sister, and asked what was going on, basically stalling. Shortly later, my mother arrived. Later on, others too. The wedding scheme was bust at this time. Now all my parents could do was damage control, since everyone who knew about it would attempt and pull it. Yelling and berating them. The three naturally said it wasn't a secret and threw my spouse under the bus. My hubby called at this point. He presented his finest confused and denigrated appearance when he arrived and denied. Denied? Gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss, lol. Says, quoting him, he claimed never to have agreed to anything so ludicrous. He sought evidence when they insisted he did, and naturally, they couldn't find any. Every SMS exchange they produced focused on typical wedding decisions. Apparently sitting on the floor, thrashing her legs like a toddler, my sister was scream-crying. Though security and other people held him back, my dad seemed like he would have beat my husband, they said. Of course, they lacked evidence, as my husband advised them against texting. Laughing, my spouse remarked, "Wow, how convenient, huh?" Then he reiterated, why would he ever agree to something so absurd? He tore them a fresh one about being terrible parents, then turned back to me, saying he wouldn't let their dumb ideas and lying ruin his wedding. Nobody thought they were true. Although the location has cameras, they refused to show me the tapes since that was just for security needs. Some others, though, recorded portions of it. It was amazing to see everyone who came out to watch the drama break apart my parents and sister. One of the finest wedding presents was seeing them have a taste of their own medicine. After years of being accused of things and not believed, while my sister was still on the floor screaming and wailing, my mother was crying, and my dad was switching from purple to white. People were questioning why my husband would agree. They insisted my spouse was in on it. Why was there no evidence? Why would they want my sister to act in this way with my wedding? To any of it? They had no decent response. They had no choice but to leave when they were eventually instructed to. Apparently, my dad had to drag my sister up since she wouldn't leave the floor. Once more. Folks said nothing to me all night. I suppose they wanted to spare me, maybe because I was the bride and not just the guest for once. But it did feel like everyone was especially trying to be friendly and upbeat about everything. LOL. My hubby believes all the pricey food they were consuming really helped. We had fun for only a short period. My spouse kept the faint, angry expression before flushing in smiles once more. We then visited the hotel to catch some sleep before starting our honeymoon. Speaking of which, we rejected it since my parents tried to pay for our aircraft tickets, but we felt that was dangerous, as they could attempt to cancel them or something. Of course. The three have tried to get in touch with me throughout that entire process. I turned away calls as my husband insisted on maintaining a paper trail. Smart thing, since my sister messaged me finally. She blamed me for her humiliation, called my husband a two-faced snake that misled her for months. She wants to print and put that on our wall. LOL. And hoped, but was also sure, that I would be cheated on by him. It was quite unhinged and lacked much sense. She also implied he was cheating on me with her. My husband actually grabbed my phone, screenshot the call records, screenshot my sister's message, screenshot some messages from my parents asking me to pick up the phone, and shared all of it in my family group chat. He continued with the deluded, "I never agreed to anything," act and even threatened to sue them for slander and harassment, while sending screenshots of messages to him, whereby they called him names and threatened him. As I was being tormented by them continuously, he sent a note pleading with my family for help on said group chat. Then finished neatly with a demand that they not share our locations to avoid my parents sending my sister over and claiming he had somehow agreed to pretend to her in our honeymoon suite. He then begged family to help stop them from trying to ruin my honeymoon now that they had failed to ruin my wedding. My family reassured him they would take care of it. Since then, we have had quiet. My sister's non-compliance disappointed my husband, who then tore her a new one and told another about it. We'll find out if it holds true. All in all, even if I would definitely like a normal, loving family at my wedding at least once in my life, They not only failed to damage something significant to me but also helped me get it back. Extra information: why do they treat me like this? I suppose you all will think the same, as I've asked this question quite a lot. I still ponder this. I have wondered this all my life. I tried asking when I was little, but they denied any difference and chastised me for acting spoiled. So I gave up. Though I have various ideas based on what I have seen, I believe it to be this: I was not supposed to be. After so long, they wanted not just a child but also a miraculous child, as they took some time to have my sister. Given our age gap is really little, I believe they didn't use enough protection much too soon after my sister's birth or expected to have a child so quickly or easily. Perhaps they were stuck with an unplanned kid while still adjusting to a newborn, since they didn't know my mom was pregnant until it was too late. They disliked me since they are not very wealthy, and the additional costs probably did not help. That is only my speculation, though. Still, I have acknowledged the response won't really matter. Whatever they did to me, it was unnecessary. Actually, did they believe this would work? After our conversation, my husband and I developed the opinion that they absolutely never wanted to do this at all. They presented my spouse with that ridiculous suggestion. We believe my sister pitched a fit over my being married first when she hardly gets dates. They didn't want to pay for my wedding and didn't think we would accept, or that it would even look good for them to do so. But by suggesting it and being turned down, they could look like the good guys to my sister while having a justification not to pay $1. My husband then agreed, though, and they couldn't undo it, or else run the danger of my sister turning on them. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.